All right, I believe that we have now reached a point in our series of tutorials on Edius 7 where we can actually sit down and start editing. There are actually three main styles of editing that you could use when working with Edius, and I would like to demonstrate all three different styles so that you can have an opportunity to choose for yourself the style that you would like to use as you begin to learn how to work with Edius. The first style that I would like to demonstrate is what I call the quick and easy style of editing, or the sometimes called the down and dirty, the quick edit. And this type of editing is really most appropriate for home family videos or an event video like a birthday party or a soccer game that you need to come home and quickly edit so that the family can see it, so that your teammates can see it, so that you can get it up on the internet real quick. It's the type of edit where you may only have one track of video and one track of audio and perhaps some music to go with it. Just a very simple edit. I know that a lot of you have probably downloaded the trial version of Edius with this in mind. You want to take that family video that you've been shooting over the last couple of years and editing that material down to some very workable sequences and segments that you can share with family and friends. So I thought that that would be the first style that we would show you, just for those people who are anxious to learn how to edit their home videos. And I should point out before we start learning how to do that is that most everything that we show you would also be possible using the light version of Edius. You've probably seen another version of Edius out there called Edius Neo. And if you've checked out the pricing, you'll notice that it is a lot cheaper than the professional version of Edius. And if all you are ever intending to do is just edit your home videos, then that is probably all you would ever need to purchase. You don't need the bells and whistles of the professional end of the program. You just want to assemble your home videos, add some music, and export that to the internet. Well, all you would really need is Edius Neo. In that case, what you might want to do is download the trial version of Edius Neo and follow along with Edius Neo as you watch this little mini-series on how to edit your home videos, because that way you will be able to determine whether or not it is going to be adequate for what you want it to do. And in the end, if it does work for you, it's going to be a lot cheaper to purchase once your trial version is finished. Okay, so that's what we're going to do over the next 2 or 3 tutorials. We're going to show you how to edit home videos, and then we'll take a look at some of the more professional aspects of editing. We're going to show you how to do the style of editing that would be typical if you're an editor coming from an Avid environment. We'll show you how you can set up Edius to be very similar to an Avid software program. And then in a third style of editing, we will show you how to set up Edius to make it emulate the interface that would be typical of Adobe products. Okay, but for now, let's move forward on showing you how to set up Edius to do quick and easy edits of simple videos. So what I've done here is I've started a new project from the one that we have been working on previously on Malaysia. And for this little mini-series on how to edit home videos, I've actually imported footage from my own little family camcorder that I use to shoot shots of my kids. And I thought we would use this as a sample to show you how I edit this kind of footage. Now, in order for you to follow along, it'll be good if you take a moment and set your settings to be identical to mine. There's some settings here on the timeline window that if you don't have them set precisely the way I am going to have them set for this tutorial, things just will not work the same as you try them on your computer. So go over to the settings here in the left-hand column and take a look at what you have set there and make changes as I make them over here as well. First of all, let's go up to our toggle between insert and overwrite. And for this style of editing, we are actually going to use the overwrite method, and we're going to set our ripple mode to be on. I know that this is just a little bit different than what we have recommended in previous tutorials, But for this particular style of editing, the quick and easy style of editing, I like to have the settings with the insert mode on and the ripple mode on. And as we look over to this little column here, make sure that all of your video tracks and all of your audio tracks are showing this little symbol here. This is a sync mode. When you see that this little symbol is here, it means that all of our tracks will sync up together. When we make a change to video track 1, well, that change will be reflected on all of the other tracks as well. So make sure that all of these are on so that we're all synced up on all of our tracks. Now, in your audio track, you are probably showing something like what we have it here, where the audio, if we were to drop a clip down on our timeline, you would see that the two channels of audio are being separated into two tracks of audio. And that can just really slow things down a lot when you're working on an edit like this, to have to adjust audio levels on two separate tracks. So it's better to have your audio, your two channels of audio. And most cameras today that are in the consumer market record in stereo anyway, so there's no real reason why, let's just delete that. There's no real reason why we can't have both channels of audio going to one track. And you can set that, just go over to the little mapping button here, right-click on it, and choose the option of audio source channel stereo at the very bottom there. And now you'll see the symbol changes there. Audio 1 and 2 show up on just the one track there. And now watch what happens when we drag a clip down. Our audio, both channels of audio, are going to show up on just one track of audio on our timeline. Okay, so having set all of your settings like that, then we should be able to work together. And as I demonstrate things here in the tutorial, you should be able to follow along at home and get the same results. Now, the whole idea behind doing a quick and easy edit like this is to be able to take the footage that you have shot with your camera and line them up on your timeline in a sequential format according to the date and time that they were shot. So to make sure that your clips are all going to line up according to the time that they were shot. And this works especially if you're trying to edit an event like a birthday party, a soccer game like we talked about, a bar mitzvah, one of these events. You come back home, you sit down, you import the media. Well, you want to make sure that all of these shots are going to line up on your timeline in the order that they were shot, based on the timestamp that your camera places on each individual clip. It's called metadata. Maybe just to tell you a little bit about metadata, if you want to see the metadata that's associated with any clip, you can do that several different ways, but one of the easy ways is just to go down to the bottom area of your bin and find that little section there that shows up near the bottom and slide that up. And now as you point to any clip, the metadata for that clip will show up here. It shows us, the date and the time that the video was shot. It shows what type of container it's in, what bit depth, lots of information, how big the file size is. Lots of good information is there in the metadata that's associated with each little clip. Well, we can use that metadata to line up our shots before we bring them to our timeline. And the way that we can do that is to go up to our View button here and keep toggling through, or use the little down arrow and point to Detailed Text Small. And maybe for this process, let's just open up our bin window a little bit. What we want to do is sort on this date timestamp. And if it's not already showing up in your list of text information, then just go to the very top bar in your bin window, right-click, and from the drop-down list there, choose the option of Record Date Time. And if that doesn't show up quite where you want it, you can slide this across to rearrange it, and you can spread this out to see more information. Now, as we click on this field name at the very top here, Edius will sort all of our clips based on the time that they were shot. So now we're starting with the first clip shot in 2012. If we hit it again, it would reverse this order, showing us the last clip in the list down in June of 2013. So to get that back, to start with the first clip, let's hit that again. And now our clips are lining up in the bin according to the date and time that they were shot. Now, the next step that you might want to do is take a quick look at the shots, and maybe we can see a little bigger thumbnail here. Now that we know that we have these sorted out according to the date and timestamp, we could go back to our thumbnail, or at least show a larger thumbnail using our list here so that we can see our clips a little bit better. And as we look through them, if there are some that you know that you don't want to use for this project, there are quite a few at the beginning here that I know that I'm not going to want to use in our little project. So I can select all of those with the Shift key held down, and I've created a little folder here to contain clips that we don't want. And so I'm just going to drag and drop those into our folder that says not for this project. And once we have got the clip that we want to start our video with at the very top of our list, then we are ready to start editing. Now, in a traditional style of editing that you would normally approach a video edit with, what you would do is start taking a look at the material in your bin window. Just by double clicking on it, you can bring it over to a preview window, and using your mouse, you can slide through that first clip and decide whether or not there's something there that you want to use. And if so, you set your in and out points. Let's maybe open this up so we can see more of our buttons here. And that's something that we maybe should point out. If you ever start a project and you're trying to work with your preview window and some of the buttons just seem to be missing, and you wonder, well, what's going on? Why don't I see my in point button there? Well, that's simply because your preview window has been collapsed to be so small that these buttons are designed to disappear. And so if you want to get them back, you have to open up your window a little bit. Now I think we're showing most all the buttons that we need. And it might help to change this to just showing one monitor rather than two. So yes, the traditional method of editing would be to look through each clip, decide if there's something that you want to use, and if so, like this nice cute shot of big sister, I should say, kissing mommy at her first visit to the hospital to see her new brother. Well, then you would set your in point there and then maybe slide it along to see how far you want to take it, and hit your out point and send that to your timeline. And you could do that either with a drag and drop motion, pointing to the video track there, and we've got our timeline collapsed so much we can barely see that. Let's expand our timeline out. And if you aren't quite sure how to do that, you can use the little slider bar here or a keyboard shortcut that you have assigned. Okay, so that would be one method. You could also send your clip that you've defined there to the timeline by finding that point on the timeline that you want to start your video, and you get it all set up there, and then hit the Overwrite to Timeline button, and that would send your clip down to the timeline as well. Well, the thing is, if you have hundreds of clips that you've brought in and imported from your camera, you can see that this would, take a lot of time. So in order to drastically change the amount of time that it takes to edit a project like this, since it's a very simple project where we're just using basically one track of video, one track of audio, perhaps maybe a music track. I'm sure we'll probably want to add some music to this sequence. So 2 tracks of audio. But basically, it's a very simple edit where we're only going to be assembling one right after the other, the most important shots that we have filmed. Well, there's a much better way than going through each one individually and picking your in and outs. Let's delete this and demonstrate what we mean by that. A method that I have found very helpful is to, once you have your shots all lined up, based on sequence and time and date shot, then select all that you might have in a list, and you can do that with Control A. And by holding your left mouse button down, point to any one of those clips in your bin and simply drag and drop them directly to your timeline. Point your mouse to video track 1 and then release your mouse button, and that will bring all of your clips from that bin down to your timeline. And now that they are on our timeline, we can take a look at our video clip. Let's maybe expand out our timeline. We can take a look at our clips and decide whether or not they are something that we want to use just by looking at them on the timeline. We don't need to bring them in from the bin and drop them into the play window and check it and set an in and out point and send them to our timeline. They're already on our timeline, and now it's a matter of eliminating the stuff that we don't want and just leave the material that we do want in our project. Now, right to start with, we see that all of our clips are selected, and that's probably not a good way to work. So let's point our mouse anywhere on the timeline, and that deselects all of our clips, and we can just now work with our clips one at a time. And so now, rather than scroll back and forth up here in the preview window, we can scroll on our clip back and forth while our clip is already on the timeline. And we can find that point where we want to start our video. Maybe it's just right before the big kiss. Then what we could do is take our mouse and trim our clip back, or we could use our C key to cut right at that point where we want to start our video. Just hit the C key on your keyboard, and you'll see that that has cut the clip right where we want to start our video. Now we can just point to that other clip. We can just now, with that clip selected, hit the delete key. And so now we're starting right about where we want. And it's probably would be nice to fade up from black. So let's go to our graphics bin and choose a color matte that we've already made there. If you haven't made one, it's a simple matter of going up to your color bar button here and click on it. And one of your options is color matte. And the one that comes by default is black. And so now we just need to drag and drop that down to our timeline. Now, we notice that it pushed all of our clips down when we did that. The way we have set up our settings here for the insert mode and sync mode and ripple mode, it doesn't lend itself well to the drag and drop method. If you're adding new material at this point, it's just going to push everything down every time you try and add a clip using the drag and drop method. But once it's on the timeline, you can point to it then with your mouse and slide it into place. Okay, and then we can place our cursor, our playhead right in between that black mat and the first little section and add a transition. Usually I like to use the dissolve transition, but you could choose any transition that you want, and you can find those over in the effect palette. Just go down to your little tabs here and choose effect and go to transitions. When you first use this tool, they might all be collapsed. It might look something like that, and you're wondering, well, where are all my effects? Where do I go to find my effects? Well, it's just a matter of opening up your folder here and choose another subfolder that might show you what you're looking for. In this case, we want transitions, and we want the 2D transitions. And so if you've got it collapsed like that, then you need to open it up again and point to the folder of 2D transitions to get the list of possible 2D transitions that you can choose from. If you'd like to see a little bit better thumbnail representation of what this transition is going to look at, you can point to any one of these, and Edius will give you kind of a little visual there of what that transition is going to look like. I usually almost always use the dissolve. I think that's the most simple, elegant effect that is the easiest on the viewer's eyes. And so I've got that set up currently as my default transition. And you can see that the little blue pin is placed in that dissolve, indicating to me that it has been set as my default transition. If you'd like to see these represented a little bit more like in thumbnail effect, well, you can go up to your view mode here and choose the icon, and you'll see them all showing up as a thumbnail representation rather than the text-based. And we can see again that our dissolve is showing up as our default transition by the big D that shows up in the thumbnail. Because it's my default transition, I can use a keyboard shortcut that I've set up to apply the default transition, and I've set it up as Control D. And if you're wondering how to set keyboard shortcuts or personalize your keyboard shortcuts, we do have a tutorial recorded on that. But if you don't want to take the time to do that, you could also apply a dissolve or any effect for that matter using the drag and drop method. Just point to the icon of the transition that you want to use and drag and drop that. Place it right in between the mat and that first clip, and then you've placed that transition into your edit. Let's open up our timeline to see this a little better and just take a look and see what it looks like. So that's kind of nice. If you wanted to extend the length of your dissolve, you can take your mouse and point to either end of the dissolve and just stretch that out a little bit to make that dissolve up from black a little longer. Okay, so now what do we do with the rest of this clip? As a general rule of thumb, to keep your viewers' interest, you don't want to have any clip last longer than about 4 seconds, 5 seconds tops, unless there is something happening in your clip that is just so riveting, so amazing, that it keeps the viewer's attention. You want to shorten that to about 4 or 5 seconds. Another case where you might want to break the rule there is if your video clip is following a certain action and you want to see that action completed, you can get away with letting your clip roll longer. But if it's just general shots, you want to be able to be changing that shot every 4 or 5 seconds to keep the viewer interest. Now, ideally, what you want to do is also have your music track in place, the music that you've decided to use in your project, have it in place so that you can also be cutting your shots to the beat of the music or the feel of the music. And normally that's what I would do. I would have my music track in place here. But because I want to show you a few tricks and tips about how to do this quick and easy edit first, I'm going to do that, and then in our next segment or next tutorial, we'll show you how to cut to the beat of the music. So let's take a look at that again and see where the action finishes up. So we've got the kiss, and Big Sister pulls back, and they interact with the baby a little bit. That's probably about as much as you'd like to take that clip. So once again, you could use the C key to make a cut there. Let's make sure your timeline or your clip is selected. Use the C key to make a cut there, and you'll see that Edius by default selects the clip to the right. I believe that you can change which direction Edius will select by default. But in most cases, as you're working with an edit, it'll work out the best if Edius chooses to automatically select the right-hand side of the clip that you cut. Because what you can do then is very quickly delete that by hitting the delete key on your keyboard. Now notice what happened is that not only did we delete that portion of the clip that we no longer want to use, but all of the rest of the clips down the timeline have moved to the left and filled up the gap that would have been left by deleting that portion of the clip. So now you are all ready to go to take a look at the next clip. It's a shot of new baby being rocked in the cradle. But again, it's probably just a little long. So as we scroll through here, maybe find the best part. I think probably the last 3 or 4 seconds are the best. So now this time, rather than use our C key, I want to show you another method that you can use to trim up this clip. Take your mouse and point to the very first frame of that clip and click down with your left mouse button, and then keeping your mouse button held down, start scrolling your mouse over towards the right, you'll see that your cursor turns into a little different symbol there that looks almost like a razor blade going through your bracket there. And that indicates to you that as you now trim this, you are actually going to be moving all of the material that is down your timeline. You're going to be bringing that down as you trim. This is indicating that your sync and ripple mode are on as you do your trim. So we get it to about the point where we wanted it. We can let our mouse go. And then we can go take a look at our next clip. As we collapse our timeline here, and maybe by using this little scroller bar down at the bottom of our timeline window, we can kind of reposition our clips to see what we're working with a little better. We can once again easily scroll through this clip and see what is the best portion to work with. Coming from this shot here, it's nice to be able to get a different angle, and maybe something right about in there is going to work. And once again, you could use your C to make a cut on that. You could point to the portion that you don't want to use, hit the delete key, and notice that all of the clips move down the timeline, and now you've got your cut exactly where you want it. Very quickly. And we'd probably only want to see about that much of the clip again before we're ready for a change. So we could hit the C key again. Make sure that your clip is selected first before you hit the C key. Okay, but this time, before we just hit the delete key, because we see that it's quite a long clip, we should maybe check and see if there's anything else happening that's important before we delete it. And we see that our camera angle has changed enough that we could maybe use another portion of this clip. It looks like we've just kept the camera rolling as we've moved around the room. So before you up and delete a long clip, you really need to take a look at it and see what else is happening there. And we've got a cute shot here of Big Sister giving her new brother a little push in the cradle. And that's really nice. We wouldn't want to have deleted that section. So once you've found the endpoint that you want, you can, again, making sure your clip is selected, hit the C key. And now we have to actually point to the section that's not highlighted and then hit the delete key, and everything moves down. So you can get an idea of how you can very quickly go through your footage and make these edits by using the trim method that slides everything down. Here we are over here on the other side. And so maybe we can take a look at that. And if that works just as well as the previous clips, well, what we might do is go back and delete that clip by just pointing to it, selecting it, and hitting the delete key. And now we have Big Sister very excited and giving him a little push. So that might work just as well. And we could then use our C key again to make a cut point there. I think it was running just a little bit long to keep the viewer's interest, and so we might trim that first section back. We'll just point to the first portion of it there so that we see Big Sister kind of getting a nice expression there, and start our clip there. And probably be out about there and hit the delete key. All right, well, I think that does it for this first lesson on how to do quick and easy edits. And in our next tutorial, we'll start adding some audio and see if we can't put together this first little segment on Baby Joshua.